We're going to do my Cowboys 53-man roster and practice squad projection on today's show. But first, I want you to rate the Cowboys roster. Think of it Madden style. 1 to 99 is your scale. Sound off for me in the comment section of today's show. I'm going to go with two quarterbacks at the in the roster projection. With the way the rules have changed, you don't need to carry 3 anymore. You can save some money cutting Cooper Rush. He doesn't go through waivers, can go right to the practice squad. So then it's Dak Prescott, Trey Lance. I can make game day call-ups for Cooper Rush as my number 3 QB. You're not going to cut Lance. This does require Lance to look really darn good in the preseason and in training camp. We will see how that all plays out, though. Over to running back. I'm not going to do projections of where potential moves could come. That just kind of, I think, loses the plot a little bit. So I'm going to stick with guys on the roster. It's not great. It's Ezekiel Elliott, Rico Dowdle. I think Deuce Vaughn can make this team in large part because he helps on special teams as an additional return man option. They're going to want a second. I think they want Deuce Vaughn to be that guy alongside Kevontae Turpin. Hunt Lipke sticks around as a fullback, which maybe the tight ends compete for a potential spot there as well. But I'm going to go with those 3 and hope it's enough. And I think that's a kind of a pretty bad running back room, even if you include the fullback. Lipke is kind of an H-back hybrid. So will the Cowboys add another running back? 1 for yes or 0 for no. I hope that they do if things don't look great in camp, but that all has to play out. Sound off in the comment section, 1 or 0. Let's talk wide receiver roster projections here. A couple obvious ones. CeeDee Lamb with an extension, please. More on that in a minute. Brandon Cooks. I think Jalen Tolbert makes his team as wide receiver 3. Kevontae Turpin will make it as a return specialist at minimum. Jalen Brooks, I think, hangs around. And the Cowboys love having their draft picks make the roster. They kind of go out of their way at times to ensure that happens. So they would rather cut Cooper Rush and put on the practice squad and redshirt Ryan Flournoy than risk Flournoy getting claimed off of waivers. That's why he's your 6th receiver on this list. Now, hopefully, we don't have to worry about CeeDee Lamb holdouts once we actually get to training camp. So will CeeDee Lamb have a deal done by the start of Cowboys camp? I have my doubts. Y for yes, N for no. It is the pinned comment, so that ad comes on YouTube. Take advantage of it. Head down there, type in Y or N. I'm going to go 4 deep at tight end here. Of note, no Peyton Hendershot. We'll come back to that in a little bit. Jake Ferguson, obviously. Luke Schoonmaker isn't going to go anywhere right now. I think Brevin Spanford is the next in a kind of recent run of undrafted free agents at tight end making the roster. I think he makes it as a dominant blocking specialist, and kind of the complete opposite of him is John Stevens Jr., who was going to make this team last year until he got hurt. This requires him to return healthy. I think he can. Offensive line time now. A lot of obvious ones. Tyler Guyton, Tyler Smith, Cooper Beebe, Zach Martin, Terrence Steele. Those guys are obvious roster locks. I think TJ Bass is a lock with how, I think, impressive he was in preseason and brief playing time last year. This team really likes Brock Hoffman. I think that's number 7. I'm going to go 10 deep here. It's a little tough to go beyond 10, and the Cowboys like carrying extra offensive linemen. They'll keep Adoga as the emergency veteran. Austin Richards was a 5th-round pick. I don't think he would get through waivers because of his draft status and the lack of competent offensive line play. He still might not be ready. I think he makes it. And like I mentioned earlier, the Cowboys love putting draft picks on the roster. So I'm going to put Nathan Thomas there over a couple of other offensive linemen we will get to later on in today's show. Before we get to the defense, which side of the ball do you have more trust in right now? O for the offense, D for the defense. Sound off for me in the comments of today's show. Defensive end and defensive tackle are kind of a similar conversation here. I think that there are 4 obvious locks at DE. Micah Parsons, who will get some different usage looks. Tank Lawrence, Marshawn Nealand, And I do think Sam Williams makes this team. It's a matter of what does his long-term future look like. We'll know more as preseason goes along. Defensive tackle, I hate this room. What I have here is kind of a hybrid DE-DT rotation. Chauncey Golston and Junior Fioco can both play defensive and they can both play defensive tackle. So I'm going to cheat and put them in a similar bucket of, they can do both. Like, they can find a way to kind of merge them and cheat a little bit. Mozzie Smith is one nose guard. Justin Rogers is another one. I'll put Osa Odigizua as the 3-tech. I would love to get another good, viable rotation defensive lineman. I don't believe in Carl Davis, so I don't have the bodies right now. I would really love to get at least one more defensive tackle. I tweeted this out in the middle of free agency. I don't know where the Cowboys are going to be able to replace Gallimore and Hankins from a snap count perspective, and they haven't yet. They haven't done anything at the spot. A 7th-round pick. Cool. I think defensive tackle is the biggest need left for the Cowboys. I think by a pretty good margin. That's what it is. So what do you think is that biggest spot left on the roster? Can't say owner. That's right, but it's cheating. Got to pick a position group that you think needs help on this Cowboys team. Let's talk linebackers. And look, they will use a strong side linebacker, to be clear. But still, most of it's going to be, the Mike and the Will, the two linebacker sets. Eric Kendricks not going anywhere. DeMarvion Overshone not going anywhere. Maurice Leofau is going to make the team. So I think Damone Clark does. Now, maybe he falls out of favor and is LB5 or something, but I think he's going to be on the team. And I'll put Willie Harvey on here. The run of UFL players continues in terms of success that has been had for the Cowboys finding those pieces. Remember, that linebacker 5 role, going to be mainly special teams. I wouldn't rule out a 6th, but I think someone has to impress me in camp in the preseason before I start to predict that. All right, over to corner. 4 locks. Trayvon Diggs, DeRon Bland, Jordan Lewis, Kalen Carson. That leaves a couple of spots. We'll come back to C.J. Goodwin's future. I'll go with Eric Scott, and I'm going to make room for Israel Mukuamu. I thought about putting another edge linebacker hybrid, like a Tyrus Wheat in there instead, but I think you want some more speed on special teams, so I'm going to go with Mukuamu. Maybe I'm wrong on that. We'll see what Bones Fossil says. Mukuamu was the 53rd person on my roster projection, to be clear. Safety, Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson, Marquise Bell, Wanye Thomas. I think that's pretty easy. And I don't think you'll see anything that deviates too drastically from that. The Cowboys specialists then. Brandon Aubrey, Brian Anger, not going anywhere. And I'll put Trent Sig on here. I will remind everybody that Trent Sig can be cut, stashed on the practice squad, and then brought back up to the active roster. If you got to do weird roster gymnastics, he does not go through waivers, so don't rule out him getting cut and then brought back to the team 24 hours later. Now, who do you think will have the best Cowboys, or who do you think has the best Cowboys coverage? I think it's us. So if you want more Cowboys coverage all off-season long, hit that sub button, youtube.com/CowboysTV. We'll project my practice squad here, but first some notable cuts that I'm not going to put on the practice squad because I don't know if they make it there. They could also choose to go somewhere else. Hendershot might go where he's got a better path to playing time. I think it's time to part ways with Josh Ball altogether. I'm out. Deshaun Wright, Dan Quinn, he's yours. Garyon Conley is a fun story, but I think you're probably asking for a little bit too much. And I went with the younger corner instead. So my practice squad projections break down like this. You remember, you can put vets on the roster. So Cooper Rush, Royce Freeman, they don't go through waivers. As long as they want to be in Dallas and Dallas wants them, they can get them through to the practice squad. I like Malik Davis. There was the one brief issue with the Cowboys coaching staff where Davis allegedly was unhappy with how much he had been playing nearing that playoff run against the 49ers. This team has always viewed Rico Dowdle as a better version of Malik Davis. Maybe he gets a run at some point. They seem to have some love for Princeton Fant. He can get through to the practice squad. A couple different receivers. Jalen Cropper, who I liked coming out of Fresno State, can continue to develop. They like David Durden. Big-sized athlete with speed. That makes sense. Racey McMath, I'm going to put on here over other players like Tyron Billy Johnson because there's special teams value. He's a great gunner. I don't know if Matt Waletzko makes it all the way down to the practice squad on this list, but I think it's worth a conversation there. Also, Earl Bostic on this list. And I think that the offensive lineman there, I think he can get through. You paid him a decent practice squad. There are decent signing bonus coming out as being a UDFA. All right, Denzel Daxon is next up here. Now, you'll notice there are 17 players in total on this list. That is because, in a bit of a surprise, Daxon is a international player pathway program guy. So he's a freebie on the practice squad. So he gets the count as long as you just want to pay him. It's a no-brainer. I'll put Darrell Johnson on there. Again, a young developmental piece. Also worth mentioning, they'll sign guys outside the roster, but I'm only going to project guys on the roster. I think we're getting too far in the weeds otherwise. Damian Wilson can stick around again for a little bit. Tyrus Wheat fits that kind of linebacker, defensive end, Sam hybrid role I think could work decently. I think there's some love for Josh Butler, or maybe some like for Josh Butler in the corner in this organization. Sheldrick Redwine just keeps hanging around on the practice squad. I'll give Amani Johnson the nod over Julius Wood as another young safety UDFA. And then finally, C.J. Goodwin. He'll be on this team. Bones Fossil loves him too much, unless something drastically changes with an injury or something again. He'll get cut, go to the practice squad, call up 3 times, then they'll go from there.